What's up, everyone? In today's video, we're gonna look at Gawad's fantastic deception. The babyface assassin is known for it, and I thought it would be really cool to break down one particular example of a really deceptive shot he hit, but then also teach you guys exactly what factors you can manipulate and learn to control in order to be deceptive, and then share some suggestions around things that you can start to do to work on your deception. There are several things that make a player deceptive. You can see them on your list right now. The first and often the most simple one is this idea of a natural deception. And a while back I created a video showing this with Cameron Pilley. So I'll link to that over here if you haven't seen it. But natural deception is essentially the idea that you can approach each shot with the same setup. So your opponent never knows what shot is coming, but you have the ability to execute multiple shots with the same setup. Number two, you can actually manipulate your technique. So that could be your spacing, your contact point, your racket head speed, your racket angle, your body, how you kind of put your energy transfer into the ball, and several other things. That's advanced, so I would not recommend that right away. Number three, you could hide the ball with your body. So that's not that you're deliberately trying to get in your opponent's way and block them. What this just means is that you approach the ball. This kind of links to number two we just talked about. You approach the ball with a slightly different technique. So you're hitting something slightly awkwardly. So let me give you an example. Let's assume you're a right-handed player and you want to go into the front left corner. So you're hitting a backhand from the front left part of the court. Most people, if they want to hit a straight drive down the wall, they square up, they set up, they get to this position, and then from here they hit that straight drive with the ball sort of in line with their front foot or slightly in front of their front foot. Now, instead of that, what if I went in more directly towards the ball and then I hit it out in front of me, but I had to manipulate my wrist and my hand to hit a straight drive from that position? That's an example of now coming in with that more direct line. My opponent is going to be behind me. I'm hiding the ball with my body. And the reason it ties into number two that we just talked about is because now I can't hit with my traditional wrist position and my traditional grip and my traditional swing. I have to adjust and manipulate that and be able to control my racket face. Hence why it's a very advanced technique and not one I would recommend right away. Number four is manipulating time, and this is the idea of holding. And it's holding with your racket. So when you're on the ball, instead of just stepping and swinging the way you might normally do it, you step and you hold and you slow your swing down, and then you accelerate at the last second. Now that also takes skill. The opposite of that obviously is what Mohamed Shrabagi does really well, which is where he goes really, really fast and then slows down at the last second to chop that little forehand drop in. So many ways to manipulate your swing by affecting the timing of the swing. There's also the other side of it, which is affecting the speed of your movement. So you might want to accelerate onto a ball into the front of the court and then slow your swing down. And now you're throwing your opponent off, not just with swing speed, but also movement timing onto the ball. Number five, setting and breaking patterns. Let's go back to that example where you are a right-handed player going into the front left corner of the court. If the only shot I've ever hit is a cross court out of that front left corner, how much deception do I have in my repertoire? Not much. This links into part number 6 that you see on the screen. Is we have to be able to hit multiple shots from one part of the court, and then you want to play one shot, and then as soon as you play the other variation, you will automatically be deceptive because you're breaking the pattern. And then if you have two options, now you also hold your opponent more honest on the tee because they're not just hanging back in the example I shared of you always hitting a cross court from the front. Now they have to be more honest on the tee to be able to cover, let's say, a drop or the cross. And now let's say you add a trickle boast in. Well, now you have three shots. The opponent is far more uncertain and hesitant on the tee, and you have more deception coming in, especially if you can hit all of those shots with a similar prep. All right, let's check out the clip I picked out for you guys of Gawad. We're going to see it in real speed, and then we're going to check it out in slow motion where I'm going to break a little bit out for you. Here we go. So fast, but it's nasty, trust me. Let's watch it over here, slow motion. And I'll break down the second video. You see the effect that it had on Joel Macon over there. And here, let's break it down. So Macon puts a drop in. It's a pretty reasonable drop. It's not a terrible drop. It did hit the sidewall, so it popped out just enough for Gawad to really get Deceptive. So now let's look at the different things that I just talked to you about Deception. First thing, his racket is set nice and high. From this position, he can hit the straight drive, he can hit a trickle boast, he can hit a cross court, or a drop. He can hit basically any shot from this position. You keep looking here as we go frame by frame. Now, let's notice a couple of other things. What shot would you have to guess that he's about to hit from this position? Did I hear boast? Well, trickle boast? Correct. And the reason we're assuming that is because his racket face is pointed towards that side wall. And the natural shot he's going to hit there is the trickle boast. Now, a couple of other things to note. One, you see relative to where Joel Macon is standing, Gawad has gone straight onto the ball and he's hitting it out in front of his foot, which creates that body block for Joel Macon, so it's a little bit harder for him to see the ball as well. But you guys already saw, he doesn't hit a trickle boast. He actually hits a straight drop. So let's see what he does. He goes and he cuts around the ball and puts the ball straight. Now, if you look at Joel Macon, he's clearly going for the trickle boast, which is why he pushes to the right, and then he realizes the ball's actually gone straight, and then he makes the adjustment. That's what you see over here. The other thing that made this super deceptive was that Gawad had already hit multiple shots from this position. He had hit the straight drive, he had a cross-court drive, he had hit a drop. I hadn't seen him hit a trickle boast just yet, but that's where the pattern side comes in, because Gawad loves hitting that trickle boast from that position, which is why even though he hadn't hit it, Macon knows Gawad's game, and thus he has to be able to cover it. So let's just do this really quickly. If we go back to this list for a second, let's check it off. He had identical approach because he had natural deception. He hit with unorthodox technique. He hit the ball actually close to his body. I'll show you that again in a second. I forgot to show you. His contact point was different. His racket face was facing the sidewall, but then he cut across the ball, so his swing was a little bit different. He hit the ball with his body. He didn't manipulate time so much in this case. He didn't hold it. It was more technical and all of the other factors. He had a pattern where he likes to hit the trickle boast from there, and he's known for that shot, and then he broke it with the technique showing the trickle boast, and he had already hit multiple shots from the same part of the court. So if we go back here really quickly, you can see that he's hitting the ball relatively close to his body, and that is another sign of breaking his technique. And if I go back even a bit more, you'll see how his racket comes around the ball. See, he didn't swing through it, he came around the ball and cut around it, and that's why his racket came out to the side. So all of that goes into manipulation of technique and the insane skill it requires to be able to execute this. Okay, so my recommendations to help you guys get started on training your deception. Now, obviously, this is based on my assumption that you are not a super advanced player. If you're extremely advanced, look back at that list of 6 things and then pick the one that you're not good at relative to the ones that you are good at. For anyone else, begin by setting up with the same swing for each shot. That is the best way to set up and create deception. And then practice hitting different shots from different parts of the court so that you can keep your opponent honest. And just by doing that, you are going to make them second guess, make them hold their position on the tee, and thus your shots will become more effective. If you only hit a straight drive out of the back right corner, for example, your opponent will always stand back and to the right a little bit when you're there, because he or she will automatically register that that's most likely what's going to happen. If all of a sudden you can hit the straight drive and the cross court drive, well, now your opponent won't be back and to the right, they might just be back and maybe slightly to the right. So now your drives suddenly get better because your opponent is now making an additional 1 or 2 feet of movement every time because they have to center themselves in the court. Now imagine you hit a straight drive, a cross-court drive, and a straight drop. Well, now your opponent can't be back. Now they have to push forward a little bit more to be able to cover that drop too. So now because they're no longer cheating to the right as much, so they're more neutral in the middle, and then they're also not that far back, they're more in front. Now every drive that you hit, your opponent is doing 5% more work on every drive you hit. And then if you hit a quality drive, that quality drive might just be a winner now instead of it being a reasonable return by your opponent. So all of these things add up exponentially, and that's why if you can set up and develop the ability to hit multiple shots from one position, it has exponential rewards for you. Last but not least, if you are keen to develop your deception and you want me to help you figure out exactly which aspect to work on, exactly how to sequence the learning, when to do it, what drills to practice, send me an email at ahad@arperformance.com, but only if you're keen and committed to training, you want to work directly with me, and you want a customized program to fit your needs, and you value high quality premium services. Okay guys, as always, thank you for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment. I love hearing from you. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Share it with a family or friend or someone who you think will appreciate the video. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.